Around the Curve. Time magazine reveals the inaugural 2023 Latino Leaders, a new list highlighting prominent U.S. Latino leaders who are making an impact on their industries and communities. Those people include Gloria Calderon Calette, Willie Chavarria, Dolores Huerta, Julio Rodriguez, Elizabeth Acevedo, Miguel Cardona, Eric Ramirez, and Robin Otterzone. It's been a busy few days in the world of Dancing with the Stars. Matt Walsh, star of HBO's Veep and a member of the WGA, has paused his involvement in the ABC show after much pressure from the WGA. Oscar winner Mira Sorvino and How I Met Your Mother's Allison Hannigan joining that list. However, in a statement by SAG-AFTRA, it backed its members who chose to participate in the series. WGA is reviewing a deal right now the studios call their best and final offer. Lionsgate suspends non-writing producer deals. Assistants and execs are to be paid through at least the end of the month. The creator filmmaker Gareth Edwards showed his solidarity for the Pix cast as the SAG-AFTRA strike continued. The film drops on September 29th. Unstuffed, a film that premiered at TIFF, is a new documentary profiling a Build-A-Bear workshop that sets a digital debut for North American VOD platforms and DVD on October 3rd. RRR filmmaker S.S. Rajamouli is producing a feature about the origins of Indian cinema. Shout TV and Scream Factory TV present the 5th annual 31 Nights of Horror, a streaming event that celebrates this upcoming Halloween season. Netflix lands Richard Linklater-helmed Hitman for $20 million at the Toronto deal. Andre Holland, Kate Mara, Zazie Beetz, and Stephen McKinley Henderson are set for The Dutchman as Andre Gaines's adaptation of Amiri Baka's play lands in theaters. The Outlaw producer Big Talk developing debut thriller about drug smuggling Submarine is coming. Sean Young is set to make a New York stage debut as a slain B-movie Wasp Woman star Susan Cabot. Cage invades dreams and goes viral in a surreal A24 comedy called Dream Scenario. Netflix's next Italian Originals will be pairs a series and feature films from the likes of Stefano Mordini and Alessandro Genovese. Tim Daly and Daphne Rubin Vega are set to lead the Night of the Iguana off-Broadway revival. Skydance's long in development Bermuda Triangle action adventure pick Bermuda has landed a director as Mark Webb has closed the deal to helm the project. BAFTA combines single drama and miniseries categories for the 2024 TV Awards, and Vicky McClure is set to lead a Paramount UK drama Insomnia from the Crown producer Left Bank. Musical adaptation of acclaimed novel Long Way Down among projects slated for new production company Edgewood Entertainment, and Emmy-winning Super Bowl halftime music director Adam Blackstone joins the Broadway-bound The Wiz creative team. Production assistants are seeking recognition as equity union members. The trade union representing the theater owners and producers, the league, does not recognize the request. The PAs will likely overwhelmingly vote to unionize. Movement picks up Marcus Scribner, Lonnie Chavis, and Method Man drama How I Learned to Fly. TIFF's People Choice Award winner American Fiction moves to December 2023. DC Studios gets permanent home at Warner Brothers Discovery in the UK. It is expected to complete construction in 2027. Julian Sands' final movie, The Last Breath, gets a UK deal. Signature Entertainment has acquired rights to the Shark Attack thriller. Coming up on this episode of The Curvy Critic, reviews of No One Will Save You at 20th Century Studios, starring my girl Caitlin Deaver. The one and only multi-award-winning Grammy supernatural Carlos Santana has a new documentary that's dropping. I'm going to be talking all about that. Plus, a new Netflix series, well, not series, but a film that is coming next week that will blow your mind. It is called Fair Play. Plus, the one and only John David Washington is in a new Star Wars joint called The Creator. We're going to talk about that. And we also going to talk about the Supreme Court documentary, How America Saved the Supreme Court, by the one and only and former Critics' Choice Documentary Awards recipient Dawn Porter. All of that and more coming up now on The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata.
Hold up. Wait a minute. I wish you love, peace, and hair grease.
Love, peace, and hair grease, y'all.
Yeah, you know we're shooting straight from the hip.
This is Carla Renata, a.k.a. The Curvy Critic, and I shoot straight from the hip.
Yeah, you know we're shooting straight from the hip.
Hi, everybody. Hello. I got my hair down today. Let me pull it back a little bit. Hey, what's going on? If this is your first time joining me, honey, I am Carla Renata, the Curvy Film Critic, and you have tuned into my podcast, which streams here on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook simultaneously at 5 o'clock. We're a little late today because your girl needed to get herself together, and we still didn't really do that, but we're going to try. My hair keeps catching on the back. All right. So having said that, I usually do a little talking about what I did the week before, and I check in with the chat room to see what the comments are. And Brandon, of course, left me a message, said that he was possibly going to see Paw Patrol this Friday and that he's very excited for the sequel this week. So thank you, Brandon, for popping in. I know you were here for a little while, and I'm glad that you stopped by. Excuse me. I know my sneezes are crazy. Anywho, I had an unusually crazy week this week. I had a lot of screeners. So because I wasn't at the Toronto International Film Festival, I went to see a lot of the films that dropped there, at Telluride, at Cannes, at Venice this week. And I saw a few of them. I can't talk about some of them, but some of them I will be reviewing today. And we'll get to those in a second. I also wanted to, before I get into the films and everything, I wanted to give a huge shout out to these filmmakers because they were super, super nice to me this week. They went out of their way to let me know that they enjoy what I do and they enjoy the fact that I like to support indie filmmakers. So this keeps catching on the back. Yeah, I might have to put this in a ponytail because this keeps catching on the back of my head. So hold on, give me a second. We may have to do a little switcheroony here. Okay. All right, there we go. because that was catching on the back of this dress and it was wearing me out. Anywho, yeah. So I want to give a huge shout out to Matthew A. Cherry, Don Porter, Roger Ross Williams, Steve McQueen. Ooh, and I'm forgetting one other one, and Christine Swanson. I want to thank those beautifully talented African American filmmakers who make wonderful, wonderful cinematic art, and they trust me to report how I see their vision, and actually told me that they like what I say and they trust me. So I just wanted to give them a thank you and a shout out to say thank you. I appreciate you too. So having said that, let's get on with it, shall we? We have a jam-packed show for y'all today. As I said in the intro, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about, this is still catching on the back of my hair. Let's fix this. Put this here. Maybe that'll fix it. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to review No One Will Save You. We're going to review the Carlos Santana documentary called The Carlos. Those are horrible pictures, by the way. We're going to talk about a joint that's coming up on Netflix called Fair Play. We're going to talk about The Creator, John David Washington's new 20th Century Studios film. And we're going to talk about Deadlocked, how America shaped the Supreme Court. And we have a really in-depth interview with this filmmaker right here, Dawn Porter, who was the Critics' Choice Association Documentary Awards Impact Award recipient last year. I'm going to check in with these comments one more time before I get into No One Will Save You. And yes, it is Brandon. So he's telling me his favorite pup in Paw Patrol was Liberty. I'm hearing she's great in the new one. And Sky, of course. And also, this is apparently about Sky and Liberty. I'm going to take your word for it, Brandon. I will see it next week. I had a bunch of movies that I saw this week and I wasn't able to make it, like I said, but I will definitely have that report for you next week. So let's get into it. No One Will Save You has been streaming on Hulu since September 22nd, which was this past Friday. It's directed and written by Brian Duffield. And I'll come back on camera for this because I got some things to say about Miss We Will No One Will Save You, because it was crazy as hell. It's a sci-fi psychological thriller told through the eyes of this lonely young woman with a really painful backstory. I won't tell you that because it will ruin the film for you, and you'll be like, what's the point of me seeing it? The end of the world is not only for those who are not ready for it, but the idea of an alien movie kind of rudely bursting in the middle of this character's years of building and cultivating her unique way of the way she's telling her story is bananas. It's like Brian, there was a Q&A after the movie, and it's like Brian took every movie you could possibly think of: Alien Invasion, Home Invasion, John Krasinski's A Quiet Place, some Tom Cruise flicks, and Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver in the Alien franchise. It's like he took all these people in all these premises and put them in one movie and got them stacking on top of each other, right? Which makes it the kind of movie that, for me, because this isn't my normal genre, it didn't seem predictable to me, and I kind of didn't see the end coming. The end was crazy. It was ridiculously crazy. But I dug it. I really dug it. Caitlin Dever stars in this film, and she never talks the entire movie. Like, the movie was over, and I was like, oh, she doesn't say anything the entire film. That's why I said it kind of reminds me of A Quiet Place, because nobody in that movie's talking either. But what I will tell you is that she carries this entire film on her shoulders. It's extremely physically demanding. It's a lot of running, and she does it all with grace and skill and all that and more. There was one scene, honey, where she went after that alien and she whooped his entire behind. I hollered out loud. There were a couple of times where I laughed because it was just stupid. But I did enjoy the film. The FX credits for this film look like the FX credits when you go to see a Marvel movie. They were just never ending. I was like, wow, that's a lot. But they had to do what they had to do. And what I will say is the best way to describe this film is that it's like E.T. gone all the way wrong. but it is worth. If you are a Caitlin Diva fan, you will love this movie because she is getting it all the way in. Okay. All right. So next up is Carlos Santana. Um, it's directed by Rudy Valdez, and it is in limited release in theaters. It's a new documentary about the supernatural, multi Grammy award winning Carlos Santana. We learned some things about him, like he's a native of Mexico. He learned to play the violin. He had a lifelong affection for the guitar, so clearly that's what he ended up sticking with. And that one of his biggest discoveries. I'm gonna come back on camera for this one too because I want you to see my face. One of his biggest discoveries is after he played Woodstock and he saw a lot of the artists and musicians from that particular legendary concert perish. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, so many others that played at Woodstock that are no longer with us. And he was like, my life is either going to go one or two ways. It ain't going that way. And so he did the best he could. His father was mariachi player and had his own band and was always kind of like really tough on him, but him being tough on him played out because this legend has been in the music industry for 50 years. He's a 10-time Grammy winning global sensation. He is a recipient of the Kennedy Center Honors, a Billboard Century Award. He continues to be one of the premier artists in the jazz, blues, and mariachi sound with a rock and roll spirituality. And I know I keep saying supernatural, but that's like one of my favorite uh, pieces of his, Supernatural. Um, with that song, Maria, Maria, da West Side Story. That song, love that song. Anyway, um, if you haven't heard Supernatural, go download it. You will love it. And the director is a two-time Emmy Award winner. He did Through Our Eyes, We Are the Brooklyn Saints, and The Sentence. This is a very rich documentary that focuses on the man, Carlos. It focuses on his culture. It focuses on his family. It focuses on his relationships with his family. It was really quite eye-opening because you learn so much about him as a man, as a artist. And you see him talking to his sisters. You see him talking about growing up in Tijuana. You see him taping himself doing solo jam sessions because he's a perfectionist. And what I also did not know, that there were 35 different groupings of the band Santana. 35. And this is what he says. He says they had to have three things in his band: stamina, stability, and a great disposition. If you don't have one of those, you can't hang out with him. And he said there was some wonderful footage of him playing in a rainstorm, playing Black Magic Woman. Oh, it was just great. What I will say about Supernatural before I go to the next title is that when he won the Grammys for Supernatural, um, he was the first artist since Michael Jackson's Thriller 17 years prior to get the most Grammys in one night for a win. He didn't get too deep into his personal life regarding his marriages or his parents or his siblings, but he touched on them a little bit at a time. This is a Sony Pictures classic film. It is in limited release. It's produced by Brian Grazer and Ron Howard. And I told you who the director is. You're going to love it. I loved it because I love Carlos Santana. So there's that. Fair play. This movie will be dropping on Netflix on September 29th. And when I tell you, this movie had me all up in my feelings, and let me tell you why. It deals with something that if you are a woman in a corporate setting, you know exactly what this feels like. It stars Phoebe Dynevor, Alden Einrich, and Eddie Marsan. We know Eddie Marsan from a lot of different projects. But anyway, so when an unexpected promotion at a cutthroat hedge fund pushes a young couple's relationship to the brink, it threatens to unravel more than their recent engagement. I could get into that, but I won't. But what I will say is that it has a killer soundtrack and it deals with this. The issues, it deals with the most important thing you're going to walk away with is that it deals with the issues of being in a relationship when one person ascends with their career, and how that ultimately changes the dynamic in the couple, like I just said. And it does change it, because the way women are perceived in the workplace is that we're not as bright, we're not as cunning or cutthroat as our male counterparts, when the opposite is actually true. And it also deals with the way that men and women individually and collectively handle that humiliation on both ends. When you think you're going to get a promotion and then you don't get it, and your better half gets it, and you feel some kind of way about that. If you are competitive in any sense of the word, you're going to feel some kind of way about your person getting a promotion. You will feel some kind of way, but you will also want to be supportive of them, right? You will definitely want to be supportive of them, but sometimes, sometimes your spirit just won't let you do it. It won't let you be happy for that person as much as you want to, because that competitive nature in you just gets in the way. When I tell you it is superbly acted, it has an ending that y'all do not see coming, and it had a little bit of every movie that you've ever seen like this is mixed up in here, but I liked it. I liked it. I came out, and me and my colleagues talked about it for a good 20 minutes after the movie was over, which is a telltale sign that the movie is doing something, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And we were discussing, do we think people are going to like this? And I said that it's not going to be a black and white thing with this film. It's going to be a black and white thing with this film. It's not going to be a gray area. So again, this drops on Netflix on not Netflix, it goes in theaters on September 29th, and it goes on Netflix on October 6th. My bad, I said that wrong at the beginning, but I'll reiterate it at the end. All right, The Creator. This is another 20th century, oops, I just gave myself checker face. This is another 20th Century Fox joint. It is starring John David Washington, and that little girl, yes, that's a little girl, it's not a little boy, is Madeline Una Voiles. And it's directed by Garth Edwards. And John David Washington plays Joshua. He's a hardened ex-special forces agent. He's grieving the disappearance of his wife, Gemma. He's grieving the disappearance of his wife, played by Gemma Chan, and is recruited to hunt down and kill the creator, the elusive architect who has advanced AI to such a level that this mysterious weapon can power an end to the war and possibly mankind himself. Joshua and his team of elite operatives journey across enemy lines into the dark-hearted AI-occupied territory, only to discover the world-ending weapon he's been instructed to destroy is AI in the form of a young child, Madeline Una Voyes. What I will say about The Creator is that, it's supposedly supposed to be a story in the Star Wars universe. So, I love that, because I love me some Star Wars. And it's very poignant because it is centered around a film, which a lot of films are recently, for whatever reason, around AI. So, the reason the SAG is on strike and the WGA is on strike, as I mentioned in the Around the Curve at the beginning of the show every week, is that there is a threat of AI and actors not being compensated appropriately for that. This movie is dealing with a world that primarily is done through AI. So when someone passes away, there's a chip that's installed in them. They're given like this, their face is the same, but from like here, from like the middle of the head back, it is just a mechanics. And even though they behave like the person you once knew, they're an artificially intelligent being that does have, but the thing is that these artificially intelligent beings do have feelings, because they're a little more human than what we've seen in some other movies. So that made it a little interesting for me. And like I said, it feels a little long, but the major reason you want to see it is for the possibilities of what AI can do. It will absolutely astound you. And secondly, you want to see it for the performance of Madeline. Madeline steals this film hands down with her charm, her performance and her vulnerability. You know, people underestimate child actors, but child actors grow up to be some of the most amazing people and actors you've ever seen, i.e., Drew Barrymore, i.e., Dakota Fanning, i.e., Elle Fanning, i.e., so many different male and female child actors that we have known and loved along the way in the entertainment industry, but is when they start as a children with that they're their most vulnerable because they are not critical of everything they do like they become when they're an adult. And I just loved her in this movie. It's worth it to see her. It really, really is. It will drop on September 29th, which is this Friday, and it's 20th Century Studios. So next up, and definitely not last on my list, is this film called Deadlocked. How America, I keep wanting to say How America Saved the Supreme Court, but America didn't save the Supreme Court. It's called Deadlocked, How America Shaped the Supreme Court is what I wanted to say. But before I get into this interview, let me check my comments one more time from Brandon. He also says, by the way, he watched the first Paw Patrol movie on Paramount Plus to get ready for the new one, which he's seeing on Friday. I love that. You better be doing your due diligence and research, Brandon. Get it. All right. So this film is directed and written by Dawn Porter. You've seen her on The Curvy Critic with Carla Nada numerous times. I've interviewed her a few times, but this time I'm talking to her about her brand new doc, Deadlocked, How America Shaped the Supreme Court. And we talked about a lot of things. We talked about, it's 4 episodes. It's streaming on Showtime right now. We talked about, you know, in the 4 episodes of her documentary, um, she delves into how we ended up having a Supreme Court. How did we get the Supreme Court? Why is the Supreme Court diverse? Why are certain sectors of society so fearful of progress and change that to the point where there is voter tampering and justification for it? And where do we go from here? Posing the question of my favorite episode in the series, The Crisis of Legitimacy. So without further ado, take a look and a listen to this interview with writer, director of Deadlocked, How America Shaped the Supreme Court, Dawn Porter. Cool. How you doing, Dawn?
I'm great. So good to see you. It's always
It's
so cheerful to see you.
aw, it's always good to see you. You know how much of a fan of your work I am. That goes without saying. I've been telling you that for the last 3 years or more. But this one, Diva, Deadlocked. Oh, you went all the way in, and it is
All the way in.
listen, and it's right on time, especially with what we're dealing with in America right now. So, what I want to know first and foremost is what was the one thing that shocked you in the process of you pulling this piece together? Because it's all encompassing, and the breadth and the depth of it is very intense.
Well, first, thanks for having me and for being such champion, not only for me, but for so many makers and makers of color. And, our voices, like our work gets out because people like you doing this. And so, seriously, sincerely appreciate, we appreciate you. Um, I am a lawyer and this is my second career making films. Some people say like, why do you make so many? I'm like, because there's so much to say. And I got started late. Um, but with this, I literally could have made a series just about race in the Supreme Court. There are so many intersections that are not always so visible. But what I wanted to do here is, I think the Supreme Court is so top of mind these days with so many decisions that affect all of us. And yet I don't know that people are familiar with the history of how did we get here? This didn't just happen overnight. This is decades in the making. And so I wanted to start with some good news. Like, my grandmother used to say, um, before the Supreme Court decision, because for her, there was only one. There was Brown v. Board. There was, desegregating schools was for her the center of what she thought of for the Supreme Court. And that's the case for a lot of Black people and for a lot of minorities and for women that we would look to. Once upon a time, we would look to the Supreme Court and say, just get it to the Supremes because they're going to protect the least powerful of us. And so I wanted to start with that to remind us Like not so long ago, that's where we were. Um, and, today, that's not the case. And so, reminding us of what we could actually be, um, is, I think, really, really important. So that's what I wanted to do with this piece.
Cool. I appreciate that. My favorite chapter or episode rather was the fourth one because it is like all encompassing of the other three episodes, but yet hinting about where we are and where we might be going after doing all this work. Where do you think the Supreme Court is going at this point?
I think, you know, like you can't choose among your children, but the fourth one is kind of my favorite too, because it's like, and one of our contributors said, like, this is what we've been waiting for, right? It's like put it all together and to say, like, okay, here we are. Um, and what I think is what I learned during this is that I'm even more of an optimist than I thought, because I don't, first of all, we can't just give up. There's no plan B. There's no other court to go to. So we got to fix this one, right? But I think the court is really aware of um, the hit to its reputation. And
Mm.
we're not just talking about the result of the decisions. There's always going to be decisions you don't like, like you don't always win. You don't always get the gold star. Too bad, so sad. But what we're talking about is the way that the court is making decisions, about the fact that there are no ethics rules, about the court just randomly making up or ignoring facts. That is pretty unprecedented. And that is open to criticism. And so, the public, we are the power of the court. It has no army, it has no budget, it has no power of the purse. Um, and so if it loses its legitimacy, that's when you're talking about a real constitutional crisis, if people just don't obey. And so that is what we're literally trying to avoid. And so I hope that this series is part of that conversation to call out for people. You do have a choice because Supreme Court justices are appointed by presidents who are elected. They are confirmed by senators who are elected. And so if you want fair maps for your elections and you want decisions that reflect your beliefs and values, and you want a court that you can respect, you can make that one of your voting issues. You can make that, you can make your voice heard.
All right, you heard it here first, people. Last but not least, Dawn, I want you to talk really quickly about the archival footage because there was tons of it. Is there anything that you really, really wanted to be in there, but you couldn't include it?
No, I think we have over 200 minutes in this series of archival footage. And we probably reviewed, I think it was something like 7,000 individual clips to compile the series. So there's a tremendous amount of work. The archivists and producers who worked on this were just buried and swimming in this to bring you some of the most important. So you will hear things like Richard Nixon say, he doesn't oppose abortion in all cases. Maybe if there's a black and a white, he opposes abortion. You will hear Mitch McConnell say that he's going to not confirm any nominees by liberal politicians because he's mad about Judge Bork not being nominated. You get to see all that for yourself. And that's part of what documentary can do, is we can remind you, this is what these people said. This is not me commenting on what I think they are or putting words in their mouth. We let them have their own say. So I'm really proud of that. We worked really hard for 3 years on this series in order to bring all of that together.
Well, it was powerful. It's a very, very powerful series. And like I said at the beginning of our time, it is right on time. I'm hoping that a lot of people see it. I know I will be talking about it and I'll be touting it because I think it's important. I, for one, was not aware of how the Supreme Court worked because that just wasn't my vibe. But now I kind of need to make it my vibe. And I also wasn't aware of how narrow the margins were that some of these people got approved. I was like, out of all of them, the only one who overwhelmingly got approved was Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and that should speak volumes to the people that watch the series. But alas, I am out of time, as always, when talking with you. But thank you so much for giving me your time. Thank you for Deadlocked, How America Shaped the Supreme Court. And thank you for all of your projects. As usual, they're always going to be like water cooler topics and something that people should pay attention to, and should want to pay attention to. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you. So great to be here.
All right. Bye. I love her so much, and her projects are always so thought provoking and insightful. And again, this is called Deadlocked. Let me show you the picture one more time. Deadlocked, How America Shaped the Supreme Court. So next week, I'm finally gonna get around to the burial. I know y'all like, you've been talking about the burial for weeks and we ain't heard nothing about no burial, but it is on Amazon Prime Video, so you can watch it there. Make sure that you watch No One Will Save You, which is streaming on Hulu right now. The Carlos Santana documentary, which is in limited release in theaters. Fair Play, which is coming to you on September 29th. The Creator, which is coming to you on September 29th. And of course, my girl Dawn Porter's documentary, Deadlocked, is coming to you right now. It is streaming as we speak on Showtime. So I'm going to come back on camera and I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode of The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata. I'm your host, Carla Renata. If you are on the YouTube, give me a big thumbs up to let me know you were here. Click that bell for notifications. If you are on Twitter, if you are on Facebook, if you're on any other things, you can subscribe to the channel like everybody else does and see what you see and hear who you hear and be in the know. I'm so stupid. But I'm going to check in one more time with the comments, because I do believe that Brandon had one more comment for me, and he did. He said, and talk about Paw Patrol, because you know that's his jam. Animated things are his jam. He said they added these new dog characters in the new one named Tot, Minnie, and Nano. They're puff dogs. They're called the Junior Patrollers. I will look out for all of that, Brandon. Thank you so very much. Thank you for always popping in and saying hello and supporting me from day one, boy. Day one. You are ride or die for sure, for sure. And I again want to thank those filmmakers that I mentioned at the top of the broadcast. Matthew A. Cherry, Christine Swanson, Dawn Porter, Steve McQueen, and there was one other one. I did this the last time, didn't I? I know Roger Ross Williams is one of them too. But you heard it at the beginning, so you know who I was talking about. Anyway, I probably should have wrote it down. But that is it. Next week, I will be in New York City, so I'll be live from New York. It's the Curvy Critic. I had to do that because it's just dumb and I'm silly and I'm corny, and y'all know this. That is why you love me. Mwah. So until the next time, be safe, be sane. COVID is going around out there again, y'all. So get that COVID booster if you have not already. If that's not your thing, getting a booster, just keep washing your hands and make sure that you're safe too. We won't hold it against you, but we ain't trying to get COVID from you either. And when I come back next week, it'll be live from New York. I'll be talking about Paw Patrol, The Burial, The Plus One, and Flora and Son. Plus, I will have an interview with a new film that stars Courtney B. Vance called Heist 88. It is directed by Minhaj Huda, and we're having that conversation with Minhaj and Lynette Ramirez from Bassett Vance Productions. So thank y'all so much for joining me on a Sunday, no less. And I know it's this evening, and we're going into Yom Kippur. So happy Yom Kippur to my Jewish brethren and friends and peers and constituents. I hope that you have a wonderful, peaceful, chillax, relaxed holiday. And so I will see you on the flip side. Deuces, baby, till the next time. Bye-bye.